Happy Friday, folks. I just want to come to you with a quick video on some notes from your post this week, a little mention of a goof that I made in the grading process of your discussion post, and then just touch base on some clarifying questions that have come to me for this coming week. So first, please know that you all are doing fabulous in your discussion post, but I made a huge boo-boo on the rubric. So in 501, the exceeds expectations check mark is at the top of my list of choices. In 683, it's at the bottom. So as I was grading 501 and then switching to 683, I just kept with the process of clicking at the top, and that meant that I accidentally, for many of you, clicked below expectations when really I should have been clicking exceeds expectations. And then just the thought of going back through 18 discussion posts and correcting that error was just too much for me. I hope you have been there and can relate, and please forgive me. So please this week pay attention to your grade, the numerical grade, and my feedback for you, and not the rubric, okay, for the most part. Thank you, and I apologize. So some cool stuff that I wanted to talk to you guys about this week is, first, you all were really wrestling with the idea of defining text. And please know that we're going to talk more about that in the coming weeks. But basically, yeah, in contemporary composition theory, text can mean a wide variety of things, not just black words on the white page. It can go all the way to some of the things you all mentioned, like images, video, but it also can be spatial. It can be a performance and things like that. And I wanted to make note that these were some names. If this is an area of interest for you, these are some hot ticket names that you might want to do some research on. We're going to be looking at Shipka in a little bit and some of her work, which helps us think about ideas of multimodality a lot in the future. The other thing that came up was to think about continuing thinking about text, and you guys thinking about literature and composition, and do they go together, do they not go together? And a lot of you considering, well, if we don't have a text, and if that text isn't literature, then what are we writing about? And so one thing that our department did for our English 102 class is we stopped calling it a literary analysis that we had students kind of practice with before they go into their required lit survey course, but rather a textual analysis. And the reason for this is that we realized it didn't really matter what the text is that's analyzed, but that students need practice digesting something, making meaning of it, and referencing back, pointing back by quoting or by describing through research or whatever the case may be, back to the text to support their ideas, right? So some of us do use literature for that, and others use advertisements, songs, nonfiction articles, and so on and so forth. And I want us to keep thinking about whether writing has to be done on, about, or for something we read. So asking the question back to you guys, what about writing just to write, writing to learn, to reflect on our lives, experiences, observations? That was a question that I wanted to kind of pose to you guys as an observation from this week. I wanted to point to as well the theory versus practice. I apologize for not sharing this kind of point sooner, but one thing I always like to share with students in this class is the composition pedagogy is going to feel more theoretical, more abstract sometimes. And the one good professor I had, Cy Knobloch at UNC Charlotte, always said, theory is not practice, and practice is not theory. They're meant to push and pull back against each other. And so when sometimes people who are in a more practical area, like teaching this stuff, they can get very frustrated when reading theory because it's like, oh, this is just gobbledygook and makes no sense because I can't practically implement these things. Well, that's the point of having theory, is not so much that I'm supposed to take this theoretical idea and try it in my lesson plan tomorrow, but rather take that theory and look at my lesson through the lens of that theory. And what does then that make me think and contemplate and potentially do for the practice? So one is not the other. They are not synonyms by any means, but they are meant to help us look with a critical lens on what it is that we're doing in whatever ways, for this case, for this class, practicing writing. Okay, so I just wanted to point to that. You can read through some of my other notes more specifically in here from the discussion points. Just a few reminders. Email, I've included the link to our quick email list. So hopefully if you guys have not already, you're adding your email to that. Some of you are adding your personal email. That's great. Just make sure that your Gardener Web email is accurate, and I give you a reminder of generally what that is for most people. And just know that any emails from me, I have to use your Gardener Web email. The writing group we've had, and in Inside Out Reading, we've still had a little bit of trouble getting that going and whatnot. These need to be easy. So with the writing group, when in doubt, just find somebody's draft, Google Doc, and start responding. Now, if they have 10 people who have already responded, they probably don't need any more feedback, but maybe someone who's only got a few so far. And then you can leave them a comment and say, hey, I responded to you. Would you mind responding to me? If anybody's still having issues with finding buddies to work with, then please don't hesitate to ask. I've been helping facilitate that. And then I believe Dr. Randall, for those of you in 501, will talk about this in her weekly announcement, but it's okay if you want to use your same writing group from this class for work for the research memo and other projects in 501. That just seems easy and obvious. Just with the discussion tips, please keep spreading the love when you're responding. I don't think there's been any issue with anyone being left out, but please let me know if this ever happens to you. And then also remember that part of the rubric is, and I haven't been really worrying about it too much in terms of grading or knocking points down or anything, but you're asked to look at your previous week and the current week and then make some sense between the two. So don't forget to reflect back on where we've been, as well as working with and thinking through what we're doing this week, okay? All right, so I mentioned in the announcement that our weekly material may have a longer to-do list than you're normally used to, so I just wanted to briefly touch on that. So remember that we had some things from last week. They were, I believe, numbers 7 and 8 or 6 and 7 last week that are now numbers 3 and 4 this week. And that was just to give you plenty of time to work through these two workshops. And one of them has some evidence required related to process work for your writing assignment, design, and inquiry project, okay? So while this list may look longer, 2 of these things are based on things that you've already been introduced to last week. Okay, this week we also are going to try a teaching post, and one question that came up, you have the option of either doing a written lesson plan or creating an audio video where you're actually teaching the lesson. I am going to ask you to do each of those things at some point whenever we have our next teaching post. So this first time, if you choose to do an audio recording, video recording, screencast recording, then the next time I'll ask you to do a written lesson plan and vice versa. So just keep that in mind as you're planning. I'm going to guess most of you are going to go with what might feel a little more safe, which is the written lesson plan. That's totally fine. But just know I'm going to push you to try to do the actual lesson or part of a lesson in the future teaching posts that we have. Let me know if you have any questions about that, and pay attention for those of you who are not in the teaching field. I do try to provide you with options, thinking about this more as a professional development workshop with coworkers rather than teaching, 11th grade American literature, something like that, okay? But let me know if you have any questions about that. Keep up the good work. I look forward to working and responding with you on your writing autobiographies and your work in the coming weeks. Thanks.